Fox 11 celebrates Hal Eisner, a legend in local journalism.
They knew it was a dangerous area, and they were shot at.
And a leader for tomorrow's broadcasters. He brought joy covering the Rose Parade.
By the way, the best day ever.
And shined an in-depth light on our beloved L.A. Hal, thank you, and happy retirement. From Fox 11, you truly are one of the ones to watch.
Hal, welcome
Hi.
to your exit interview. Who are you, and what do you do?
Well, who am I? That's a good question because I'll answer it a couple of different ways. I'm Hal Eisner. My legal name is Harold, but only my mom and sister would call me that, so the rest of the world knows me as Hal. And I've been in broadcasting for 58 years. At the age of 16 is when I started, and it really became my identity. So when we talk about who are you, I'm a broadcaster. I'm a journalist, and proudly so.
What moment made you realize journalism was your true calling?
I'm an accidental journalist. What does that mean? When I was 16, a local radio station in Dallas had a contest. Send in a postcard and tell us why you want to report the high school football scores on Friday night. And I happened to be in the marching band, so I was going to all the football games, so why not? And it was a good way to meet girls, I thought. I was a kid, and be on radio, what a cool thing. I sort of thought I was going to be a lawyer when I grew up. That's really what I was thinking. And so that was at 16, and that dominoed into not only my giving the score on Friday nights, that also dominoed into my being on a local radio station at a Baptist orphans home in Garland, Texas, where the person who collected those reports was doing a Sunday morning show and wanted me to come in, bring a few news articles out of the newspaper, and give him a break on the hour so he could go to the bathroom. I swear to God. And so, I did that, and I would write a few stories out, and he'd go to the restroom, and I would talk. And the thing that's interesting about that is that the power of the radio station was the power of a light bulb. It was 60 watts. That's the power of a light bulb. But it was an entry-level thing. I suddenly realized that this was interesting to me. And when I went to college, where I thought I was going to get into pre-law, the first thing I did was I went and got a job at a local TV station fixing up movies for the night, and at a local radio station doing automation and putting weather forecast in a 55-card deck and just marking off the log. So I had a job at a radio station, I had a job at a TV station, and I thought, this industry is kind of pulling me in. And it's at that point that I made the decision to just go all in on broadcasting, and I changed to the University of Houston. And so it was, it was sort of, I wasn't gonna go there, and I ended up going there, and that's where the accidental journalist comes in. But I would tell you that if I hadn't sent that postcard in, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, because I wouldn't be here.
What were your first impressions of LA when you arrived from Texas?
It was too big. I came from Dallas and Houston, which were like smaller Los Angeleses. And I got here and I could not figure out what my exit ramp was on the freeway. I couldn't figure out, where things were, because the city is so massive. And it dawned on me that if I could make Los Angeles more bite-sized, in other words, what part of Los Angeles do I use? I mean, I don't go to Palm Springs for lunch. I don't go to, Pacoima for dinner. I don't go to work in Rancho Cucamonga. I mean, this big Los Angeles obviously is, I'm talking about areas outside of Los Angeles, but this city seemed too big for me. And I had to get it down in my mind to what is my Los Angeles? And my Los Angeles was where I worked, where I ate, where I lived, where I went grocery shopping, what mall I'm at 10, and that was it. So as long as I was able to compartmentalize the city, then it wasn't so big. it became much smaller and more manageable. And it took me about a year before I really felt comfortable here.
The Northridge Earthquake. What memory from that day still sticks with you?
Well, a bookshelf came down and gave me a karate chop across the leg, and I passed out. And that was kind of frightening. Some neighbors came and helped me come to. And next thing I knew, I was on the road trying to get to ground zero, where I believe it was called the Northridge Meadows apartment complex had collapsed onto itself, killing people on the first floor. And that's where I ended up that day, reporting on what had happened, my part of team coverage. And it was frightening. That, I wasn't here for Sylmar, but Northridge to me was terrifying. The feeling of it, what was it, 4:30 in the morning, this thing hit. It woke me up, bookshelf comes down, karate chops me across the leg, next thing I know, I'm passed out on the floor. It was just a very frightening experience, but once I got out on the streets and got to work and I knew my family was okay, I could see how damaging this earthquake was, and the fires and the gas lines, and I could see how serious this was. I had no idea, except for what I had seen on the news about, how devastating an earthquake can be. And so Northridge was quite a shock.
In the 1992 LA riots, what moment challenged you the most?
Well, the whole thing challenged me. I remember we heard the verdict and went outside to go join a cameraman so we could go out and cover the story. And as soon as we heard the verdict, we kind of thought, this is not going to be good. We went down to South Central to a church where a number of ministers were gathered, and we were outside of the news van watching the monitor, and we could see Reginald Denny being beaten at that intersection. And I looked at the ministers and they looked at me and they went, it's all over. Because they knew that the impact of that was going to be powerful. I remember being stationed outside a bus depot in South Central LA. That's where police chief at the time, Daryl Gates, was holding court down there with his troops. And I remember a reporter from Las Vegas who was terrified, who somehow, as I recall, felt a whiz of a bullet go by. And I took him, put him in our news van, and tried to console him and to calm him down because he was, I was a little scared myself, but he was really scared. And I was trying to, I didn't know him, but I was trying to befriend him and to help him in that situation. The whole situation was, it just really, got completely out of hand at a pretty quick point. And the fires, I remember being on the roof of the station, seeing the columns of smoke all over the city. I remember I had a little bitty baby at that point, and I remember my wife was holding the baby and looking out the window, and buildings were burning across the street, across the Pico Fairfax area, and at that point it was like, this is awfully close to home, and we started thinking, well, maybe instead of a duplex, maybe we need to go live in a house. So I think what happened was that was a powerful suggestion of what could happen. It was a difficult story to cover. There were a lot of times that me and other reporters were ducking under walls to make sure we stayed safe. And it will forever be in my mind.
How did covering the riots change your view of journalism?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that covering the riots changed my view of journalism, because my view of journalism has always been the same. As a journalist, our job is very similar to a student council person in a school. You know, you go to class, and the student council person goes to a meeting, and they get information, and then they come back to homeroom and they talk to the students about what they learned. And that's what I do. You know, I would go out, cover a story that maybe others couldn't get close to because they were working in an office somewhere. And then at 5 or 6 o'clock, whenever the news was, I would tell them what I learned, kind of like a student council representative. So journalism to me was always about sharing with others what information I could gather. Journalism is a reflection of our community. I look at it like if you go into your office and you see a bulletin board and there's some notes on the bulletin board, then you look at that and you see what's going on in your workplace. Well, that's kind of what we do. We're an electronic bulletin board where we provide story information, much like things that are with push tacks put into a cork board. I think that the big difference here in the message that I guess I want to suggest is that what television does, it serves as a mirror. So as you watch the television, it's almost as if you're looking at a mirror and seeing a reflection of what's happening in your community. And that's how we fix things. And that's how we have dialogue about things that aren't good. And we find ways to, if not create new laws with our legislators and our city council members and others, we find a way to look at ourselves and be introspective. And those who would prefer not to see themselves in that mirror, I think, are missing something. Because when you put your head in the ground like an ostrich, you're not going to see anything. And television, I've always felt, is an important reflection of our community.
Is there a story you wish you had covered differently?
Is there a story that I would like to have covered differently? I'm always a work in progress. I do stories, and sometimes I'll watch and I'll go, I could have done that a little bit differently. Maybe I could have done this, or maybe I could have done that. But I don't think there's a particular story that I wish I'd done over again. I just think that, you know, we could always do better. We can always get more facts. We can always get more information. Are we being honest? Are we telling the truth? Are we being fair? And are we balancing out the information in a story so everybody feels a little representation in it, and it's not one-sided this way or that way? And so to me, I've always felt the same way about journalism. We are first responders. We have responsibilities to you. And what our job is really important. And it's as protectors of the First Amendment, we are able to, in a free society, tell you what you need to know, or at least what you think you might need to know, or what maybe we think you need to know in what's happening in our community, whether it's weather, whether it's sports, whether it's news.
What sparked the creation of Fox 11's In-Depth?
That's a good question. We had a public affairs show here on Channel 11 called Midday Sunday. Tony Valdez retired back in 2016, and I was lucky enough to become sort of the one who had the mantle of the public service program here after Tony's retirement. And I felt like I thought it was important to have a new program, a new platform, not to continue on the old one with the same name, but to sort of give it a little bit of freshness. And so Fox 11 News In Depth was a title that I came up with. And it has stuck for 8 years. And we have talked to, oh my God, so many people and dealt with so many issues, and good things have come from that in people's lives. I'm so proud of that show, and I feel like what we set out to do, we've, for the most part, pulled off.
Which in-depth guest or episode moved you the most?
I think I'll tell you that, but I think I'm going to also tell you something else. That's okay. Sam Chapman and his wife, Laura, Dr. Laura Chapman, who's a psychologist on TV, their son died from fentanyl poisoning. And I had them on Fox 11 News In Depth, and it was heartbreaking, as are all of the fentanyl deaths. And we started to explore these things one after another after another. And I talked to Sam, and I said, you know, you got to do something so that Sammy's death is not in vain. You got to do something that gives you purpose, and you got to do something that makes you feel that Sammy's name can live on in a good way. And I suggested that he find a way to form a nonprofit. And he had some very strong feelings about what went wrong with the algorithms and so forth and social media platforms. And I said, fight for a law. You got Jessica's law, you got this law, try to get Sammy's law. And he is now this close to getting Sammy's law. And in many ways, that's thanks to Fox 11 News In Depth.
What impact do you hope In Depth has on viewers?
I think Fox 11 News In Depth has Fox 11 News In Depth is a public affairs show. So we really deal with things that are happening in the community and nonprofit organizations and the efforts they have to do everything from have food banks to create new laws in situations where things have not gone right. And I think that Fox 11 News In Depth has provided a platform for people who felt that they wanted to be able to talk to the public. That's what we did.
Why did you start the podcast, What the Hal?
Don't you like saying that? What the hell? Come on, all together now.
What the hell?
Oh, I love that. It's great. I have a name that is fun to play with. My favorite holiday is Halloween. I do not have halitosis. I'm somebody who loves self-effacing humor. So what the hell? I mean, why not have a podcast called What the Hell? And so that's what we did. And we set off to do a podcast in our podcast studio here. And I couldn't say, what the hell? Enough. It just kind of like came right out of my mouth. And the news director at the time liked the name. I liked the name. I had a bobblehead. And so we made that bobblehead part of the cover. And I was thrilled with that. And so up until the pandemic, we would go into the podcast studio here on the second floor of this building. And we would have our guests sit there and I would do an interview. When the pandemic happened, we weren't allowed to have people in the building. And in some cases, we couldn't even get in the building. And so what happened was, instead of keeping the podcast the way it had been, we started taking an audio track off of the Sunday show, Fox 11 News In Depth. And that became the podcast. And what we've found is that people who may not get a chance to see it on Sunday, listen to that. We've got some pretty good numbers on that podcast. And it really has resonated well with a lot of people. But it really comes back to the fact that I like the name. What the hell?
Why is giving a voice to the voiceless important to you?
We are the ones who are able to give a voice to the voiceless. There are so many people that have things they want to say, and they don't have a place to say it. They don't have the power to say it. Many people are intimidated. And for us to be able to provide a voice for the voiceless is a service. You know, it's a good thing. And you know, there's a Jewish term for that I think it does. It's a mitzvah. It's a good thing we do. And there should always be a platform to provide a voice for the voiceless.
What do you feel is your biggest accomplishment?
Well, I do want to talk to you about moments. Be sure to ask me about moments. But my biggest accomplishment, I think, is Cam News. Because back in the year 2000, I felt that a lot of stations weren't allowing interns to go out with the crews because of liability concerns and insurance. And I happened to be president of the Associated Press Television Radio Association at the time. And I thought, why not create a camp? This is Hollywood. Why don't we get some actors and actresses and special effects makeup artists and kind of create a story? And this is the only time you're going to hear me use the words fake news, because it's fake news. And so we got the LAPD, we got the Sheriff's Department, we got the DEA, we got the Fire Department. All these agencies came together with their public information officers. We had actors and special effects makeup artists. We had a property that I would rent in Malibu Canyon, and we would have a camp one weekend a year pulling off this fake news story for these students who want to be broadcasters to cover. And we did that in conjunction with Pepperdine University, which has an anchor studio. And so we had an anchor program as well as a reporter program, and then we did it in both English and Spanish because there was nothing like it, as far as I know, anywhere on the planet Earth. And there are people today, not because of the camp, but because the camp draws the kind of people that have fire in their belly. And there are people going back to year one that are now major broadcasters at major television stations, some of them right here in Los Angeles, who have been to that camp. And so my hope is that in retirement, I'll still be able to do that camp and still be able to help young people who want to do what I did. But I think the bottom line on this, and this is really important, I think it's important to recognize that we don't live in a vacuum. We have to help each other. People open doors for me. It became my turn to open doors for others.
What's your biggest regret?
Doing this. No, I'm kidding. I don't have any regrets. I'm going to tell you something. I thought about this a lot lately because I'm retiring. I retired from daily news reporting. I retired from daily news reporting on January 2nd of 2025. This was the 43rd anniversary of my first day on television in Los Angeles. That was after 15 years of radio in Texas and Louisiana. And here we are now, and I'm now exiting from Fox 11 News Indepth, which was the off-ramp that I was afforded after I retired from daily news reporting to continue to be able to have something to do for the next 6 months in which I could still come in the door, I could still see my friends and my colleagues, and I could still have a little something to do at the anchor desk. This has been a wonderful way to retire. It's like you're going down the freeway at 60 miles an hour. There's your off-ramp. Get on the off-ramp, and you slow down until you get to the bottom of the off-ramp. There's a red light, and you stop. And I'm now at the red light. But I really needed that off-ramp because I didn't think, after working almost 60 years, that I could just walk out of the job cold turkey. And I was very lucky to have a general manager, Steve Carlson, who understood what that could be like and helped me make that happen. And now I feel like I can do these sort of things, but retirement's not an easy thing to do. Some people, they count down the hours and the minutes and the seconds until they're retired. Other people do that and then find out retirement's not so easy. And you have to have structure. And you've had structure all these years going to work, and all of a sudden now it's like living in a bowl of Jell-O because you're not structured. And so I think that, I don't have any regrets. I'm so happy with how my career has gone that if I had to go back and do it all over again, I'd probably do it the same way.
Being hit by a drunk driver in 2021, how did that moment reshape you?
It did reshape me. My photographer that day, Joab Perez, and I were doing an interview on the sidewalk on Hollywood Boulevard about the opening of the El Capitan Theater from the pandemic, and life was starting to come back. And so we were interviewing the president of Starline Tours and asking him about, this notion of coming back from the pandemic. And while we were doing that interview, some sirens came down the street, and Joab stopped the camera so we wouldn't get all this noise that was coming towards us. At that point, a driver came up on the sidewalk. He was twice the legal limit, according to authorities. He hit my cameraman. He hit me. He hit several tourists. And then he went into the glass of a market right by the El Capitan Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. I was in the hospital for a couple of months. I had 6 fractured ribs, a fractured tibia plateau, and I had everything from a walker to a wheelchair. I mean, this was not an easy comeback. Joab, his collarbone was completely disconnected, and that had to be screwed back in. He had broken ribs. I mean, it was really a terrible accident, and authorities said we could have been killed, and I believe that. As I was laying on the ground face down, and I looked to my left, I could see underneath that car that there were people, and I was terrified that somebody under that car might be dead, and maybe my friend and my cameraman, Joab Perez. The police came. The firefighters came. I'm looking all around, laying down. People are saying, don't move. You may have some broken bones. Don't move. Stay where you are. And I took their advice. And the next thing I knew, one of the firefighters said, we're going to have to cut off your suit. Now, you got to understand, this was my favorite suit. Really nice blue color, rich. I love this suit. And I thought about it for a second. I said, okay, cut it off. Maybe I can get another one. By the way, I've never found another one just like it. But that's what happened leading up to the hospital. And I think that what really made a difference, and I think I want to say this out loud, I think what made a difference in my life was the viewers, the public. My social media blew up. Emails, text messages, phone calls to the station. People were worried, and they were worried about us. And I've never seen such an outpouring of not just support, but love from the public. I could feel that, and I'm not really a real religious guy, a little more spiritual than anything, but I could feel that uplifting from the public through this social media, which we often criticize. And my goal suddenly became, I've got to get better. I've got to get back on my feet. I've got to get in front of that camera so people see I'm okay. I was not going to let this person who is now in prison serving time, I wasn't going to allow him to cause me to retire prematurely. And I did. I got back. And even to this day, people will come up to me and say, how you doing? You still okay? I've been following you since the accident. That means a lot.
What legacy do you hope to leave in journalism?
That I was a good guy. I hope that I hope, what legacies does anybody want to leave? I want to be able to leave a positive legacy. I want to be able to say I helped future broadcasters with the camp that I and others together created. I want to be able to say that I had an impact on this community. I would, when I came here back in 1982, it was 81, beginning of 82, I didn't think I'd last 2 weeks. The talent in this market was extraordinary. And I had come from radio. And I had a boss who became a bureau chief for CNN who believed that I could make the transition from radio to television without having had television. So I became a CNN correspondent, and he brought me from Texas out here to Los Angeles. But I honest to God did not think I was going to last 2 weeks. The talent here was extraordinary, and the reporters and everybody in this town had such experience. And here I am 43 years later and still saying I can't believe I lasted more than 2 weeks.
What's been the most rewarding part of serving Los Angeles?
I feel like I'm connected to Los Angeles. I feel like I'm connected to this community. I feel like this is my home. And I feel like, especially when people come up to me in the grocery store, or on the sidewalk, or wherever I happen to be, that people appreciate what I've done, and I appreciate what I've been able to do for them.
Something you didn't do, but wish you had.
Made $1 million? I don't know. I mean, these are good questions, and I think that, we always want to be able to do something for the greater good. We always want to. If it's pointing out a bad law, if it's pointing out that there's no law, if it's trying to get to the underbelly of a problem or a controversy or whatever it may happen to be, that's what we want to do. And it's always just about the facts. And I know there's an awful lot of dissension out there about news and truth and honesty and facts and politics and all that sort of thing. But the bottom line is, and I will tell you this, I have never gotten a memo telling me to write a story to the right or write a story to the left. As journalists, we're hired because of our skill sets. We're hired because we know how to do things that hopefully keep us out of the courts and getting lawsuits. And, that's our job. It's like you go to a doctor. You expect them to be smart about what they do. You go to a lawyer. You expect them to be smart about what they do. Come to a journalist. You can expect us to be smart about what we do, and that's what our employers believe. And so I don't know that there's anything I'd like to have done that I haven't done, but I can always do more. I mean, I think we can always strive for more. We can always strive for better stories. We can always strive to make people whole again. We can always strive to bring the world into a better place. And I don't mind saying that some people retire and that's it, they're done. They're over it. I don't think I'll ever be over it. I think once a reporter, always a reporter. And I think that, I see something, I'm going to say something because that's just who I am.
What personal sacrifices have you made for your career?
What sacrifices? This. I don't know. I mean, I think, we all make sacrifices. We make sacrifices for our families, for our kids. We do whatever we can to get through what we need to get through. And an occupation or a job is an opportunity to make an income that pays for the mortgage and pays for the food and pays for the soccer and pays for this and pays for that. And those are the things we have to do. And sometimes that means working long hours. Sometimes that means working all around the clock. I've been graveyard at night. I've been morning drive. I've been on Good Day LA. I've been midday. I've been evenings. I mean, I've had every part of the clock there was to have. And those are sacrifices you make because you're not going to be with your kids all the time if they're home from school and you're on the news. So sometimes, we find a way to do these things. And I'll give you one really good example. On Thanksgiving, most people have Thanksgiving on Thursdays, right? I always worked on Thanksgiving. So my family had Thanksgiving on Saturday. And even now that I'm in retirement mode, this year we still had Thanksgiving on Saturday because that's the way it became what we got used to in our family. And that was a sacrifice not to have Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving.
Where's the future of this industry going?
There will always be purveyors of information, period. Whether those are on radio or television or newspaper or some form of whatever that turns out to be. It might even become, pardon me, a hologram. right? And so, there will always be people who will tell you what's happening in this world as long as we're a democracy, as long as we have a First Amendment that protects our freedom of speech. And so the future of journalism, in my mind, is bright. The young people that are coming up, people that have been in my camp, those people are bright, they're eager, they have incredible desire to want to be able to do what I've done all these years. And I'm not worried about the future of journalism. I just think we change with the times. And as technology changes, we adjust accordingly, and we find new and better ways to do what we do. We did not have smartphones. We didn't have something like this to take a video of something that happened right in front of our face. So things have changed. Things will always change because things just always do. But I think journalism is sound.
Biggest mentor?
Jeremy Claypool. I always appreciated a couple of people. There's a fellow named Steve Edwards, maybe you heard of him. And Steve gave me my first news anchor job in Houston, Texas, at KTRH Radio, a CBS station, while I was going to college at the University of Houston. Later, I would work with him here at Fox 11, but that was a big door he opened for me. Larry Lamont, another one who was a mentor of mine. He opened doors for me. He was with CNN. He brought me here as a correspondent with CNN. I worked for him at an all-news radio station in Fort Worth, Texas. Because of that work, despite not having any television experience, he believed that I had what it took to be on television. So he was a mentor. These two mentors meant so much to me. It was one of the fundamental reasons I started Camp News, because I felt that people opened doors for me, and it was my turn to open doors for them.
What's been your favorite memory from covering the Rose Parade each year?
I love the Rose Parade. Rose Parade is one of my favorite things ever. And I love meeting the Queen and the court. I love meeting the people who make the floats. I just love everything about the Rose Parade. And so I feel blessed that for the past 8 years, I've been able to put together a show every year on the Rose Parade. I've gotten really to where I know the people involved in this so well. I've met the new president every year. I've been out to the tournament house. But what job can you have where you get to get behind the scenes of a parade every year? My job.
How has the creativity of the floats inspired you over the years?
The creativity? I'm a creative person. I appreciate creativity when I see it. And when I see things like the complicated designs of some of these floats and the animation that goes along with it and the music that comes out of it and the theme of the parade, I'm inspired by that. Anything that sort of hits my creative juices impresses on me. And I feel like every year I see something about this Rose Parade that just is really striking. That somebody has in a design made something I didn't think could be made. Somebody figured out a way to hit the theme that year when the theme to me might have seemed a little obscure. So I'm often moved by the creativity of the Rose Parade and some of what we see in there.
What message do you want to leave for your colleagues and viewers?
For my colleagues, we have an important job to do. We carry a torch that we call the First Amendment. And that's our job. That's what we do. And I think we just have to continue to, plow ahead at digging up stories, digging up controversies, fixing problems. I just think the more technology improves, the better we can do our jobs anyway. So my message to my colleagues, who I believe are well equipped, and I don't really have to give them any particular tips, but keep going. Keep that drive going. Keep that desire going. Keep that fire in the belly, because we're counting on you.
What message do you want to leave for the viewers?
For the viewers, I love you guys. You have no idea how much I love viewers, because I see you in the grocery stores. I see you when you're walking down the sidewalk, and you come up to me and you introduce yourself, and you're my audience. You're the people I do my work for. And so when I do a story, I'm doing it for you. And so the importance of my relationship with you is far beyond anything you could possibly imagine. And so I think the message I have for you is be supportive. Remember that we work hard to try to get the information accurately. Remember that we really spend a lot of time in brain cells trying to make sure we haven't made a mistake. Remember that local news is very different than national news. And what we do is cover stories in your neighborhood, in your community, on your street. Welcome us sometimes, because we have an important job to do, and it helps us when you help us.
Any departing words of wisdom?
Well, life is good. It just is. And, maybe you have a good day, maybe you have a bad day, but the bottom line is we're walking around. We're breathing the air. We're smelling the flowers. Life is good. And make it a point every day to enjoy it just a little bit more than you did yesterday.
What's your rating of your career?
A. I love this career. I love it so much, I give myself an A. I could not be happier. I really couldn't be. I've talked to a few people in recent days, and I've said, you know what, if I had it to do all over again, I'd do it the same way. The career has gone well. I'm so gratified and satisfied that this life of mine has taken the direction it took, and that I've done the job that I've done. And I'm proud of being part of the journalism community.
What's your rating of the sit?
Well, I think the chair is very comfortable to sit in. So I think that this is a nice set for the sit, and I'm still learning about the content of the sit, but the things I've seen so far sit pretty well in my mind. I think this is a wonderful feature, and I think that, this is something that's worthy of more interviews and more opportunities to talk with people and find out what they think. Where'd the lights go? Oh, you know what? If you had asked me how I'm doing, I would have told you. If I were any better, I wouldn't know what to do with myself.